Phantasy Star IV, Retold. Written by Michael Plymel. Narrated by Mason Bourne. Chapter 5. Chaz. After a rather short journey down a well-traveled road, we reached the village of Mile. It's just a small town that people often use as a waypoint when going to and from the academy city of Piada to the south. There's nothing inherently interesting within this small village, or there shouldn't be. But as we step through the wooden gate that surrounds the town, I catch sight of a recently constructed ranch. Ranches are a common sight, especially in smaller villages. But what makes the one here in Mile unique is the creature kept within the fence that surrounds the ranch.
Is that a sandworm?
Han asks, eyeing the massive worm head sticking out of the ground. Hey, I say, why is everyone breeding monsters these days? Aren't we trying to get rid of them?
There will always be people with competing interests,
Alice says,
even when it comes to monsters.
Han breaks from our group and walks toward a man standing near the ranch's gate. I'm also interested in what he has to say, so I follow while pretending not to hear the sigh coming from Alice as she does the same.
Excuse me,
Han says to the man.
Are you breeding sandworms at this ranch?
The middle-aged villager smiles in response.
That's right, this is our newly built sandworm ranch. What do you think, isn't it great? It's sure to attract a lot of tourists. It's my first time seeing one, so I lack a reference to judge its quality, but how do you stop the sandworms from escaping?
I had the very same question in my mind. The posts are thick and spaced closely together, making for a sturdy fence, but sandworms can move while completely underground.
Good question, lad.
The man puts his hands on top of a nearby post.
This here post goes deeper below ground than above.
Even a sandworm can't travel beneath it.
Oh, I understand that. What I meant to ask is if these posts are really strong enough to prevent them from escaping.
Of course! Look how thick they are! The man grabs the post with his hands to emphasize how small they are compared to the thickness of the post. Well, he's got a point. Those are some serious posts. Other sandworm ranches operate just fine, but they're usually away from any town simply due to how dangerous sandworms are.
That wood is particularly soft,
Han says.
It deteriorates quickly when exposed to moisture, but it doesn't seem like these posts have been properly treated for outdoor use.
Nonsense, the man says. The builder assured me that this is the proper way to construct a sandworm ranch.
Let it go, Alice says. If there's a problem later, the Hunters Guild will deal with it.
She walks off, and we follow her into the town proper. As stated, Mile is just a rest stop. Not many villagers live here, and most that do rely on the traffic coming through here for their income. Because of that, there are actually a few decent shops here. Merchants who've moved in to take advantage of the town's reputation as a waypoint. Isn't this town in a pretty good location? I ask. I'm surprised it's not bigger than it is.
It's because of that.
Alice points north. A sea of sand that stretches out as far as I can see, the only landmark being the silhouette of a castle on the horizon.
Quicksand, Han says, and it's spreading.
Spreading? I turn to him. It's already so close to town, so does that mean...
Yes, before long this town will sink into the sand.
Then why did that guy build a sandworm ranch here?
That's precisely why he got upset. It's short-sighted at best, dangerous at worst.
We came right by Mile on the way to the academy city, but we didn't stop, so I don't know this town. Alice does, so I've just been following her. To my surprise, we end up at an equipment shop. She pushes open the door and walks straight up to the counter.
Let me see your slicers.
The clerk complies, lining up about a dozen different slicers on the counter in front of us. I've practiced with them for fun, but I never got competent enough to use them in battle. Still, I gained enough of an eye for them that I can rule out several immediately. Knowing Alice, she's probably looking for the least bad among them, rather than the best. She picks up 2 and inspects them closely. After giving them a thorough check, she places one back on the counter.
This one will do.
She holds up the one still held in her hand. Great choice, the clerk says as he puts away the other slicers. That one was crafted by none other than...
Don't care.
Alice cuts him off, placing 160 meseta on the counter. The clerk eyes it with a stiff smile. That slicer is worth twice that easy.
You're going to try and convince a hunter that this amateur work is worth that much? You should pick your targets more carefully.
Alice holds up the slicer in her hands and points to one of its edges.
The curvature of this edge is off. Do you know how much I'll have to correct its flight path each time I throw it because of that? You don't, do you? No, of course not. Because you don't hunt monsters every day like I do. Even with this defect, it's the least useless among the ones here. Just good enough until I get a real one. In fact, now that I think about it, 160 meseta is too much.
Alice reaches for the money on the counter, but the clerk motions for her to stop. Wait! I'll make the trade for 160 meseta.
Just keep your voice down, would you?
Alice stops her hand and lets out a thoughtful sound.
I guess I'll accept your offer.
She places the slicer on her waist and steps back from the counter. Wow, she really knows how to haggle. After seeing her in action, I want to give it a go myself. I don't have much money right now, but there's no telling what I'll find here, and at what price, so it can't hurt to look. Hey, can I see your daggers? The clerk begins gathering them up for me, but Alice speaks up to stop him.
Show him your swords.
Huh? I can't afford a sword right now.
You told him that you're good with both daggers and swords, but from what I've seen, you're far more suited for a sword.
The sword is my main weapon, but I didn't have the money for one good enough to match these hunter-issued daggers. The counter's already lined with swords, so I take a look at them, regardless of whether or not I can actually afford one.
Pick your favorite,
Alice says. Seriously? That's awesome! I eagerly look through the ones lined up on the counter. This one. I grab the hilt of a sword with a medium-length blade that tapers toward the tip. It's not bad, but it's certainly no masterpiece. I'd say 280 meseta is fair for it, so if I want a good deal, I should start with 200 meseta! I yelled to the shopkeeper. It's 400. Blades like that are rare around here. The man seems to want to make up for his recent failure. That's way too much. 240 and you're lucky to get that. Sorry, I thought you were serious about trying to buy it. He reaches for the sword on the counter. You can't be serious. Fine, 280. That's a fair deal and you know it. A fair deal is when both sides agree, and I say 280 is too low. He stops his hand just above the sword's hilt. Tell you what, I'll cut you a deal. 320 meseta in my hand, and it's yours. He turns his hand upside down so the palm is facing up. This guy. His asking price is obviously too high for a weapon like this, but for some reason, there's not a shred of hesitation as he pretends to be doing me a favor while overcharging me. That's when it hits me. He knows Alice is paying for the sword, which means he's doing it to get his meseta back through me. I look to Alice and see a smirk on her face. She knows exactly what she did, and now she gets to enjoy watching me try to haggle from a massively disadvantaged position. In that case, sure, 320 meseta sounds like a good deal for it. I grab the sword from the counter and smile toward Alice. She walks up to the clerk and puts 320 meseta in his hand. The man smiles as he counts the coins. Huh, bad move, Alice. In the end, all it did was cost you more. Satisfied with my new sword, I follow Alice as she walks away from the counter.
Oh, right,
Alice says.
I'll be deducting the cost of the sword from your pay, with interest.
She continues toward the exit, but I can only watch on as I stand in the middle of the shop, The clerk's laugh enters my ears. My meseta. As we head to the inn for the night, I console myself that although I'm now heavily in debt, at least I have a good enough sword. If you're enjoying this retelling, then consider checking out the author's original work, The False Hero. It's a faithful adaptation of the Japanese isekai genre, written for a Western audience. Available in ebook, audiobook, or box set format. Links are in the description. Of course, the audiobook version is narrated by yours truly, Mason Bourne. Stay tuned, because more chapters are coming for Phantasy Star IV Retold.